Cone drills improve speed, quickness, and change of direction movements. The L cone drills are great for both beginner and advanced athletes as it focuses on just one change of direction movement. I'm Dan Sheldon, and these are all of my L cone drills that every athlete should know and practice to start getting better at changing direction.
Sprint to sprint. Set up 3 cones 5 yards apart in the shape of an L. Sprint to that first cone, then make a 90-degree cut and sprint through that last cone. As you make your transition, keep your shoulders over your toes and really open up those hips. The goal is to be as efficient as possible. Focus on being fundamentally sound first, and then the quickness will come. Sprint to shuffle. In this drill, we're going to sprint to that first cone and then transition into a shuffle. Keep those shoulders down and do not rise up in your break. Once you hit that last cone, turn and sprint through it. Always transition to a sprint through that last cone no matter what the drill is. Sprint to karaoke. Start in a sprint and then transition into a karaoke in that first cone. That transition should be smooth and crisp. Make sure to really drive that knee up and over in that karaoke. Your sprint through that last cone should occur on your high knee crossover step. Sprint to back pedal. This is a harder transition as you're going from a sprint into a back pedal, which is a forward to a reverse movement. The key to a smooth transition is staying low and keeping your shoulders over your toes as you make your break. Imagine if there's a board above your head that you have to stay under in order to make that cut. Shuffle to shuffle. Start shuffling facing away from the cones and then transition into a shuffle facing the cones. You will start leading with one foot and then transition into a shuffle leading with the other. Keep your center of gravity low through your transition and keep your feet within the framework of your body to keep yourself from slipping and falling. And don't forget to sprint through that final cone. Shuffle to sprint. Face the cones and shuffle to that first cone, then transition into a sprint through that second cone. When you make that transition, really pump those arms at the shoulders to help drive those legs out of your break. Remember that arm drive is equally as important as leg drive. The goal is to be as quick and efficient as possible. Shuffle to karaoke. Face the cones and shuffle to that first cone, then transition into a karaoke. Keep your shoulders over your toes and your feet within the framework of your body when you make that transition. If you need to, go half speed and really practice those transition steps, as that is the most important part of any cone drill. Shuffle to back pedal. Start in a shuffle facing away from the cones and then transition into a back pedal. It's important you keep your shoulders over your toes and really pump those arms as you transition. Notice how the body position in every transition drill is the same. Your shoulders and head should never leave that horizontal plane as you make your transition. Karaoke to karaoke. Start your karaoke leading with one high knee crossover and then transition to leading with the other leg. This is a difficult transition as it is an unnatural movement, so practice at half speed until you get the hang of it. Really drive those knees up and over and swivel those hips as you karaoke. Karaoke to sprint. This is another difficult transition as you are going from a hip shifting lateral movement into a forward sprint. The key to this transition is keeping your shoulders forward in your karaoke so that they are positioned correctly to sprint. Pump those arms through your transition to get into that sprint faster. Karaoke to shuffle. This drill transitions from one lateral movement to another. Start your karaoke facing the cones and then transition into a shuffle with your back to the cones. As you make that final turn to sprint at the last cone, really drive your arm through as you make that turn. This will help make that transition step more powerful. Karaoke to back pedal. Start with karaoke facing away from the cones and transition into a back pedal. Keep your center of gravity over your toes and make that transition on your high knee crossover step. If your shoulders are back, your plant step will land on your heel and increase your potential to slip and fall. So keep those shoulders over your toes and drive out of that transition step into a back pedal. Back pedal to back pedal. Again, the body position never changes throughout the transition. Back pedal into that first cone and then drive those arms and legs to transition into a sprint. Always focus on finishing strong through that final cone and repeating the drill in both directions. Back pedal to sprint. Again, the body position never changes throughout the transition. Back pedal to that first cone and then drive those arms and legs to transition into a sprint. Always focus on finishing strong through that final cone and repeating the drill in both directions. Back pedal to shuffle. Start in a back pedal and then transition into a shuffle. This is a more natural transition movement, so focus on gathering your feet underneath you as you transition. Do not rise up in your break, as it creates a wasted and inefficient movement and can result in slipping or falling. Back pedal to karaoke. Really pump those arms to drive that back pedal and then plant and transition to a karaoke. Work all of these drills half speed until you can complete an efficient transition. The more functionally sound and efficient you are, the quicker your change of direction movements will be.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel and start checking out all of my other training videos so you can start to invest in your athletic success.